With Plan B emergency contraception, we're in control of our future. It's backup birth control you take after unprotected sex that helps prevent pregnancy before it starts. It works by temporarily delaying ovulation, and it won't impact your future fertility. Plan B is available in all 50 U.S. states at all major retailers near you, with no ID, prescription, or age requirement needed. Together, we've got this. Follow Plan B on Insta at Plan B One Step to learn more. Use as directed.
Hello and welcome back to the show. It's Sunday, so that means it's time for Off the Record on Tudor's Dynasty and Beyond podcast. I'm Rebecca Larson.
And I'm Amy McElroy.
And here we are again, ready to have some fun today, aren't we?
We are.
Last week we did an episode called Men Behaving Badly, and it was fun. I saw some of the comments.
It was fun.
I think I immediately just want to go right to comments with you to see and to let everybody else know what everybody was saying.
Yes. So this one from Constance says, the Edmund Howard story who can't stop peeing his bed and his wife is irritated is my new favourite story. Thank you for making me laugh. That's why we listen, because we adore history, but we also need to laugh.
That's right. That was a good story.
Stephanie talks about where we'd mentioned about laughing. So she says, if you want to listen to something else, basically, go and do so. If you don't like this one, move on or sit down and shut your mouth. So I love it.
She couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. So thank you, Stephanie. And then we've got comments from Dwayne over on YouTube. So he says, oof, I wanted to like Brandon. Essentially likes the idea that Henry VII took him in. But obviously it's not a great ending for Brandon. He does mention that he feels that women were terribly victimized, which, yeah, of course they were.
Yeah.
Then we have Cindy, who says, I would love a behind the scenes moment. I love your podcast and the laughter feels like hanging out with friends. So is there something you want to mention there?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, Cindy, you've probably noticed since that episode, we have put out like a blooper behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I've never done one of those before because I thought it was going to be so time consuming to go back and try and find the funniest bits and bloopers. But I had so much fun doing it, and I hope everybody is enjoying them as well.
Yeah, it is. There are some funny bits in there, definitely. So,
It really gives you an idea of what it's like right before we start recording the show, because
yeah.
every day, every time we do it, there's something that happens and we just start giggling or one of us is goofy.
You must have lots of bloopers saved.
I've thought about going back through the Dr. Emma and Me ones, but there's like over 30, almost 40 episodes that I'd have to go through, and we'll see. We'll see if I can squeeze it into my super busy schedule.
Yes. Douglas says, just have fun and do your thing. Teresa says, this was great. Thanks, girls. So glad you enjoyed it. Laurie. Oh, no, actually, I'm going to finish with Laurie's. Douglas also says the pissing story was cool. You know, before the Victorians, a lot of words we now say are curse words were used in all conversations. That is very, very correct. Mark says, enjoying the program. And then Laurie's, let me go back to it, says, love the idea of an episode on women behaving badly. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, nice.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence, because we decided that today's episode is women behaving badly. I feel like after we did men behaving badly, it was only fair that we do women behaving badly. So then I put the question out on social media, asking, And man, I was not prepared for how many people were saying things like, well, you have to put it into context, what's behaving badly for women. And that was something I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about, obviously, because women behaving badly, to the men was like every single day they open their mouth. So it's a
It
different.
is hard to measure because what we would say behaving badly today,
Yeah.
God knows what would have happened to Tudor women, and things that they would say was bad behavior, we would be, no, that's called speaking.
Right. Yeah. Being human.
Mm.
Yeah. So I did take that into account when people were saying that, but there were a lot of suggestions. A lot of them, I would say, went back to Elizabeth the First and her treatment towards her ladies.
Yeah.
That was probably the most prevalent one. And then there were a couple that we're actually going to cover today, but I'm going to keep that a secret until we get to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to get with this today because we each picked one that's a little longer story,
Yeah.
and then we have a couple shorter ones. And we're going to start out with the story of Alice Arden. And this is one that I actually talked about on the podcast 5 or 6 years ago. And it just so turned out that this is one that Amy researched too. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's funny because we tell you guys we do this. We come up with a topic, we both go off and we do our own thing. Occasionally I'll say, "Oh, I'm doing this person," and you'll say, "I'm doing this person." And then we know we have
Yeah.
our main ones. And then there's like little ones that we want to add in, but we don't talk about them. And then today we come together and I go, "Oh, I want to do one on Alice Arden." You're like, "Oh my God, that's somebody I researched too."
Yeah.
Because the Alice Arden story is so intriguing to me. And I think Amy and I are going to try and do this one together
Yes.
a little bit. So maybe I will kind of start and then you
Huh?
can jump in a little bit.
Yeah.
But Alice Arden, this story is definitely a woman behaving badly. I feel like most of the women behaving badly in Tudor England have to do with the men in their lives, one way or another.
Yes.
And Alice, okay, so okay, before we start, I have to say, I have this book, okay? If you guys don't have this book, and I'm holding it up, I should read it. It says, A Biographical Encyclopedia of Early Modern English Women. This is one of the best books I've ever purchased. I think it was kind of expensive when I got it. It's through Routledge, but it has a bunch of like tiny biographies inside, like little paragraphs, stories about these women in history. They're broken down into categories. And there's one category that's called criminals. And that's where Alice Arden falls under, is the criminal category. And so evidently, Alice Arden was promiscuous. That's what this book said, okay? She was a promiscuous woman before she met her husband, Thomas Arden. Thomas Arden was 8 years her senior. And apparently, before she met him, she was already having some type of liaison or love affair with a guy named Richard Mosby. I want to call him Dick because that's the name that people go by in America. If your name is Richard, your name is Dick. So I think it's more fun to say Dick Mosby. I don't know why. So these two, Thomas Arden marries Alice, and the benefit of marrying Alice is that her stepdad is Sir Edward North. And I think if I have the right North here, he was part of Edward the Sixth Council. And all of this is like happening during Edward the Sixth's reign as well.
Yeah.
And Thomas Arden apparently knew of this affair that his wife was having with Dick Mosby, but didn't say anything because she brought so much to the marriage anyway.
Um, Dick, so he did not like Thomas. Um, Probably because, he's sleeping with Thomas's wife.
Yeah.
But for some reason he did not like him. So basically Alice and Dick decided to kill her husband.
As one does.
Um, but they don't appear to have been the brightest bulbs, candles in the Tudor period. There was a few attempts, and they also recruited other people into this as well. So they didn't just keep it between themselves. So the first time Alice tried to poison him, so it was either in his broth or whatever, his
Yeah.
pottage in the morning, whatever he had, but he found it tasted funny.
So he didn't
So
eat it.
yeah, well, he actually vomited apparently.
Oh.
So even if he didn't eat it, he also vomited what he did. So got
Fail.
away with that one.
Yeah.
And then they tried to use Tudor assassins. So, so these were two men who were ex-military. One was called, well, I assume it's a nickname, Black Will,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and the other one was called George Shakebag.
I love
So
that.
they hired them to ambush poor Thomas while he was in London. So he is traveling through London on his way back home when they try and ambush him. But apparently the bad weather interrupted their plans.
I blamed it on the
So,
weather.
yeah, mist, coming off the Thames, whatever. But because of the bad weather, Thomas luckily had decided to travel in a group instead of on his own.
Mm.
And obviously, you're not going to get away with murdering one man in the middle of all of these other people. So basically, they decided, okay, we've got to go to the next stage. We've got to do something. So on Valentine's Day, of all the days that you could murder your husband, in 1551, Alice decides this is it. I'm gonna kill it. So Thomas is at home with his wife, and Black Will, who's hiding,
He's in the closet.
yeah, probably the beginning of horror films, comes out and strangles him with a towel.
Yeah.
As he is doing that, Dick hits him over the head with a pressing iron. Poor guy.
Yeah.
And then Black Will cuts his throat.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Now, Alice, obviously probably frustrated that her previous attempts did not work, is not quite sure that being strangled, being hit over the head with a 14-pound pressing iron, and then having your throat cut is enough to kill you.
Right.
So
Right.
she
Obvious.
then stabs him about 7 times herself.
She's like, you're dying
Poor
this time.
guy, like seriously. Um, so they obviously he is dead. So they move the body, they clean up the house, and this is the bit that I can't get my head around. She actually then holds a dinner party at home and is like, oh, I'm so distressed. Where's my husband? Why hasn't he come home yet? He should be home by now. Where's my beloved Thomas? In a field somewhere, my dear.
Nearby. That's the
Yeah.
part of this story. Like they didn't even put him that far away.
So, do you want to do the next bit, or should I want me to just
No,
finish
go
it?
you go for it.
Okay, so obviously people believed her that day because, she's having a dinner party. There's no sign of her husband. She's distressed that he hasn't come home. But the next day, his body is found. They obviously think that they've been very clever, but again, not the brightest candles because it had actually snowed. And what had they done? They had walked right through the snow. So basically, left footprints between her house and her husband's body.
It's like an episode of Stupid Criminals.
Yeah, I don't think you need Poirot to solve this one. I think, we're good to guess who did it.
Oh my God.
So, back in the Tudor period, to do something like that to your husband was actually petty treason,
Yeah.
which is extreme, but God, if someone deserves this penalty, it's got to be her. Because how many times do you want to try and kill your husband? Like,
Yeah,
dear God.
that's premeditated if it's ever.
Yes. So she was charged with petty treason, and she was actually burned at the stake in Canterbury.
Yeah.
But at least nine other people were executed alongside her.
Oh, I didn't know that it was that many. I know
Yeah.
that Mosby's sister was involved in arranging, I think the final act, and
Mhm.
Mosby and his sister were both hanged for it. So I
Yeah,
assume.
so Dick, her maid as well, her maid was
Oh,
executed. And then there was actually a man that was convicted, but after he was executed, he was acquitted,
oh, that's poor guy.
which is very sad. But yeah, like it's it's not a funny story, but it's just bizarre that, back then people were plotting and they weren't just
Yeah,
talking to their lover, so to speak. They were involving everyone in,
yeah,
can people come and help me kill my husband?
yeah, yeah. We,
It's crazy. Like, what do you think the outcome is going to be? That you kill him, and then what?
yeah. What was your plan? Oh, let's go drag him out to a field nearby and leave our footprints.
Mhm. And I'm sure her stepfather was very, very proud when all of this
Yeah,
came on.
I,
So,
I
but
do.
it's actually been the inspiration behind like plays and stuff. So, and probably horror films that Blackwell was hiding somewhere ready to strangle you. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
Alice.
It's, well, like you said, it's not funny, but we can't help but laugh at it now because it's so ridiculous. Like, how did you think, and her husband survived poison, survived possible ambush, survived
Mhm.
all of these things, only to then be murdered in his own home. Like,
Yeah.
wow. Was he really that bad? I know a lot of people didn't like him, but was he really so bad? Like, I don't know. So she is definitely the poster child for women behaving badly.
Oh, yes.
And I do have to say, in this book that I mentioned before we got started, most of the criminal stories are women trying to knock off their husbands. So I think that says something of the time period too, right? Like these poor women, they didn't have any agency. And they're like, my husband beats me, or my husband does this, or my husband's always
Yeah.
having affairs, and now I want to bump him off. And then they get caught.
And especially when you consider that for women, it was petty treason.
Yeah.
So the difference between the punishment for a man who killed his wife and vice versa is extreme.
Yeah.
For women to still consider that that is their only option.
I find it interesting that she was burned at the stake. Like that is such a horrible way to go too. And the other people involved were hanged.
Mm.
Like she was burned. Yikes. Anyway, on that happy note, next up on the list, this is one that Amy found. And she told me the story beforehand. It made me giggle. And so I thought we should definitely talk about this. Who are we talking about next?
There's two very short ones. So the first one is a lady called Anne Coppings. So she's an everyday lady, and she actually went to court in Norwich. Um, and I think this is the funny bit because she was charged with slanderous behavior.
Ooh.
What she actually did was went to a bowling alley, which makes me laugh anyway that the Tudors were playing bowling, but
Yeah.
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 Um, and there was a man there called Ralph Skirl. So there's not much known about him, but he was at the bowling alley. And apparently she started singing this slanderous rhyme at him. And the reason that I wanted to mention this one is because that is funny that all you have done is sung a rhyme at a man and you are now in court.
Jesus.
Um, and it was recorded as like a breach and all sorts. I just find it insane. But apparently, to sing something at a man in particular was deemed as bad because it was like you were trying to silence them. Because if you're singing a song at them, you're not asking a question, you're not making a statement, there's nothing for them to respond to.
Yeah.
So basically, their response is usually they're humiliated in front of everyone. And this is at a bowling alley. So she was literally charged with that. Can
I
you
mean,
imagine, like, going to court because I sung a rhyme at somebody in the bowling alley?
let's compare it to modern day. Like I've been in a bowling league before. Let's pretend it's league night at this bowling alley. League night Tudor style, right? And he's getting ready to go up, to bowl, and I start heckling him. Almost the same thing.
Yeah, you'd been caught.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous. I want to know what the rhyme was. I want to know what she was
I
singing.
know, I'd love to know what the rhyme was. But the next one made me laugh because you'll get it as soon as I mention what it is. So we don't know this lady's name. She is just known as the wife of Peter Watts.
Okay.
So, and she was also in court in the Tudor period. So, hang on, let me find the insult that she uses because it is funny. So, apparently, um, she's in Norwich as well. So Norfolk kept very good court records where you can find all of these funny anecdotal things if you want to go digging, that is. So there was a man called Anthony Day that was basically a law official. So he wasn't police, he was part of basically a watch.
Okay.
So he um was he went to her house to try and serve a warrant on her son. So it's nothing to do with her, it's for her son. She basically grabs hold of this man and is that the insult that she says is he should put a turd in thy teeth. So obviously you can probably translate that in your minds into what the modern day equivalent was. But the reason I found it so funny was because obviously last week, and especially with the comments that we've had, people really enjoyed the story about Edmund Howard peeing in his bed. So
Yes.
last week we had peeing his pants. Today we have turds in teeth. So
Welcome to our academic show.
but she went to court for that. Now, that was probably the least bit of it because apparently, she didn't let him serve the warrant, which is what she was probably there for.
Yeah.
But I just found that bit really funny after the peeing the bed story last week. So
Turd in your teeth. I'm gonna have to remember that one. I'm gonna use that on somebody today.
put a turd in your teeth.
Love it. Oh my gosh. You guys, these stories, it's like we talked about at the beginning, women behaving badly. It's like on this scale, and it's a different scale than what we would say modern day, but that would have been behaving badly.
Yeah, I did almost go down a rabbit hole after that of typical Tudor insults.
Yeah.
But I thought, no, I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I've got too much to do and cannot afford to be spending 3 days looking at Tudor insults.
Okay, I think we have to do an episode about that because I think that would be fun. I know, like William Shakespeare, like Shakespeare insults are some of the best, but I would love
Yeah,
to see. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put this out to the listeners right now then. If you know some really good insults, please put it in the comments because we'll talk about it.
yeah. But you have to tell us what they mean though.
Yes. Don't assume we're going to know.
Otherwise, we'll just might get a load of comments that are insults
Yeah.
with no context.
Right. Yeah, gosh. This will be fun. This will be a good time. All right, so moving on. Now we're going to go to a little bit longer stories. And I decided that I wanted to talk about Margaret Wotton. I think that's how you say it. When I interviewed Carol on Henry Wotton, that's how she said to say the name Wotton. Okay. Anyway, sidebar there. Margaret Wotton. I had written an article on my website many years ago about this and her behavior and how she was considered unmotherly. And I wanted to tell everybody this story. So this is really one of those stories that makes us rethink what we, how we view motherhood in the Tudor period. At the center of this story is Margaret Wotton. She is the mother of Henry Grey. Yes, that Henry Grey, the Lady Jane Grey's father. So we're already dealing with a family that's going to become extremely important later. When Margaret's husband, Thomas Grey, died, he was the grandson of Elizabeth Woodville, just to kind of give you some context where this family line is. When he died in 1530, she didn't fade into the background like some widows would have. She took control. She managed her family estates while her son was still a minor. And Margaret was also very much part of court life at this time. She rode in Anne Boleyn's coronation procession. She stood as godmother at the baptism of future Elizabeth I. So she's not obscure. People knew who she was. She was well connected, respected. She was visible. So the real conflict here begins with her son, Henry. Henry refused to marry a woman that he had already been contracted to, and that her name was Catherine Fitzalan. Now, breaking a Tudor, like a marriage contract in Tudor England, didn't come without a fine. And so Henry was fined £4,000, which is like millions of dollars by today's standards, if I have my conversion right in my head. It's a super large amount of money. Margaret panics at this point because she's in control of the estate. She's handling the money. She has to figure things out. And she's thinking, how do I pay for this fine? How do I still marry off my daughters? And how do I keep a household running after paying out all of this money? So what does she do? She decides to tighten control over Henry's finances hard. Like she's like, nope, boy, you disobeyed and you're not getting any money unless you beg me for it, essentially. So this is where her reputation kind of starts to fall apart. People begin calling her unnatural or unmotherly. Why are they calling her that? Well, because she restricts her son's allowance. And even though she technically has legal right to do so, he's still underage, right? So she legally can do this, but he's also a man and she's a woman. And so the men should get whatever they want. But she's really looking at debts. She's looking at obligations. She's still looking at her daughters to take care of. And she's got this.
Of course, because she would have had to provide dowries for those
Yeah.
daughters. How is she going to do that?
Yeah. After she
If
just paid millions of dollars.
He's spending everything. So.
Yeah. So she's crunching the numbers. She's trying to figure out how to work this all out. Eventually, Henry marries Frances Brandon, who's closely connected to the royal family. And obviously, Amy knows this name as she is, written a lot on Mary Tudor, the sister of Henry VIII. Margaret agrees to this marriage on a condition that Frances's father, Charles Brandon, must financially support the couple until Henry comes of age. So this works out pretty good in her favor. I guess, and this kind of gives us an idea of like how she's thinking. She's like, okay, well, I'm financially crunched, but my son is going to marry royalty, essentially, and they have the money, so they can pay for him. And once Henry reaches adulthood, the situation explodes. Margaret begins writing desperate letters to Thomas Cromwell. These letters, they're fascinating because they completely flip the narrative, as we had just talked about. She insists that she's always been a good mother. She's sacrificed financially for for her son, and the rumors about her are false and damaging. Now, to be fair, I think that's the truth. She seems to have been a decent mother. She did sacrifice financially for her son, who made a bad decision. And because of all of those things, rumors were being spread about her being a bad mother. Nowadays, we'd look at it like she's a single mother taking care of business, doing what she has to. But
Yeah.
we're back in Tudor England again. And so the women are the ones that are going to be besmirched. So the relationship deteriorates. Margaret accuses her son of refusing to pay debts, taking control of income that should be managed responsibly, even denying her access to her own belongings. So now at this point, Henry is paying back his mom for probably what he feels was disservice to him when he should have had access to this money. She writes that she cannot even retrieve her own possessions from her own house and that her servants are waiting with carts, costing her money while her son blocks her. So now it's completely turned. It's gone from my son is terrible, I can't do this, to now he's behaving so badly. Uh, this is what makes the story so compelling, I think, is because Margaret's controlling, financially strict, very aware of power and status, but she's also a widow trying to survive. She's responsible for many children. She's operating within a system where money equaled survival. And Henry, well, he kind of comes across as entitled, financially irresponsible, possibly resentful of his mother's control. And I want to
Mm.
go back to financially irresponsible because this is part of his story that comes back later when Thomas Seymour tries, he takes Jane Grey in as a ward. He offers to pay Henry Grey £2,000. Like at this point, Henry Grey's still having financial issues. So really, maybe his mom was doing something good, trying to.
But the thing is, though, it's not even, she might have restricted his allowance, but somebody put her in that position.
Yeah,
Because the Tudor period, if you're of the aristocracy or whatever, if your husband dies, you don't necessarily get to keep your children.
right.
They can become wards. We know that. Look how many wards of the crown there were.
A lot.
Someone put her in that position that she was responsible for all of her children and managing those finances. So, someone trusted her to do it. So I think it's a bit unfair that it's just her that gets the blame here because would the situation have been different if he'd have had the fine before his father died? Who knows? Would his
Yeah.
dad have then made different arrangements in terms of who looks after the money? I don't know. But he probably hoped that his wife would be responsible. And if the daughters weren't married by the time the son was of age, that the son would take responsibility for them.
Yeah.
But he probably wasn't expecting a £4,000 fine either.
That's a huge fine. So,
It is.
so really, was Margaret behaving badly? Not by modern day standards, by any
I
means.
would say no. Uh, I think she's restricting one to look after the many.
Yeah, exactly. And this just goes back to all the comments that people made on social media,
Yeah.
define behaving badly. Well, in Tudor times, she was behaving badly by the standards of
Yeah.
men. But in the end, I think she proved to be right at it all since her son had so many problems managing his own finances later on in life.
Mm. Yes.
Henry Gray, that guy was a piece of work too, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I think he was like, I do really get the impression from him that he was like this spoiled rich kid who was used to getting his way and doing whatever he wanted. And when he didn't get his way, he stamped his feet and started spreading rumors or slandering his mother for being a terrible mother. How could she treat me? I could see him hanging out with his friends, they're like hanging out around a bonfire. And he's like, you guys won't believe it. My mom won't give me 10 pounds to go and buy a hooker. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and you can probably imagine his joy at becoming the son-in-law to a princess, dowager queen,
Yeah.
and a duke,
Yeah. Turned out,
who just so happens to be the king's best friend.
yeah. Good job. Too bad the rest of his life didn't go so well after they were dead. Henry
Poor
Gray.
him.
Yep. Poor him. So that was Margaret Wotton. Maybe not such a bad woman. Maybe she didn't behave so badly by modern standards, but
But then, to be fair, what did she do really that was worse than who we've already, apart from Alice? Take Alice out of the mix. Apart from Alice, what did she do that is worse than what the other two ladies did? Do you know what I mean?
nothing.
Like,
Yeah,
there's
nothing.
nothing there that today we would go, oh my God, that is shocking.
Yeah, not at all.
Nothing.
Yeah, and I'll include a link in the show notes too to the article that I wrote years ago because it has some more details and it shows the letters and stuff in there and pictures
Yeah.
of her. So you guys. All right, that's Margaret. So next we move on to one that Amy was working on. And this one, this is an interesting story. I feel like I only know bits and pieces, so I'm looking forward to Amy telling me this story as well.
Well, there's quite a lot about this person, so I don't know if we'll have time to go through absolutely everything, but we could always do a follow-up if people wanted it. So
Okay.
let us know. And the lady that we're going to talk about is Penelope Devereux. So, um, for those that don't know who she was the daughter of Walter Devereux, who was later, after her birth, was the first Earl of Essex, and Lettice Knollys, who was obviously the daughter of Francis and Catherine Carey,
Yes.
um, which made her a relative of Mary Boleyn. So,
Yes.
yeah, so
Royal ties again, kind of.
yep, definitely. So, as said, her father was the Earl of Essex. She was brought up, well, her father spent quite some time in Ireland, so, and that's where he died. Um, and when Penelope was younger, um, she spent a lot of time around her mother. Um, uh, when he died, her brother, which I'm sure everybody knows the name, Robert Devereux, a Queen's favourite.
That's right.
Maybe we should have put him in Men Behaving Badly.
We should have. Why didn't we think about it? Well, we'll have
Maybe
to
we
do.
could do a siblings behaving badly.
Yeah. Oh, I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. So obviously he I forgot the word completely, inherited the title Earl of Essex, and he was obviously on that point becoming a favourite of Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Um, but at the time, Penelope was still quite young. She also had a sister, Dorothy, and then they had a younger brother as well called Walter. So they all went into wardship of Henry Hastings, third Earl of Huntingdon. Now, obviously, her mother is still around and goes on to, this whole family behaves badly, goes on to marry Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester,
In secret.
in secret. So, yes, naughty. And so her own mother is banished from the court, basically, never forgiven by Elizabeth. Um, but essentially, before that, Penelope, there was a proposed match going on between Penelope and Henry Sidney, sorry.
Okay.
Um, so, that kind of went out the window. So Henry Sidney and his son Philip had started negotiations to marry Penelope, but obviously with what happened with her mother, they obviously took a step back and thought, yeah, we're not getting involved in this. Like, don't want to get on the wrong side of Elizabeth. Thank you very much.
Too much
So,
scandal.
yeah, which is probably a good thing for Penelope because, she doesn't seem like a lady that wanted to be told what to do. So, but I also think Philip Sidney escaped quite lightly there. So basically, Penelope ends up in the care of Huntingdon and she gets quite I suppose, a Puritan upbringing. So it's quite a simple life. But she is then presented at court. She attends court with Catherine, Countess of Huntingdon, who happened to be Robert Dudley's sister.
Okay.
So, there's all family ties, but she's also Philip Sidney's aunt. So lots of ties there.
Yeah.
Um, so she's presented at court. She is allegedly absolutely beautiful. Is said to have had golden hair, dark eyes. So the typical Tudor beauty is
Yeah.
what I'm referring to. So she seemed to do quite well at court. And it wasn't long before there was a match. So, um, Burghley was the master of the Court of Wards at the time. So any marriage for somebody that was a ward of the crown, or obviously by crown, I mean in a wardship anywhere, had to be approved by him. And Huntingdon decided to find her another match. Now the Sydney one was over. So he actually arranges for her to marry Robert Rich, 3rd Baron Rich, who would later become Earl of Warwick. And Penelope does not want this marriage.
I don't blame her. He's a
But it
rich.
happens anyway. And I think what's sad is, even though they're the ones that kind of called it off, apparently Philip Sidney still loved her. I
Oh,
think that's quite sad
yeah,
that
that is.
he had to watch her go off and marry someone else, even though it was it would have been his father, not him, that called it off. So
Yeah.
that's a bit sad. So anyway, she gets married to Rich and they have 4 children themselves. But obviously, she's at court. She is the beauty at court. She was apparently excellent at dancing, spoke multiple languages. She was the inspiration behind courtly love poems and all that kind of thing, including ones written by Sidney. Obviously, Philip Sidney was a very famous and very accomplished poet.
Yeah.
So, you know, she was definitely noticed at court. Um, but essentially what happens with Penelope is She obviously doesn't like her husband. Can't blame her very much. But she doesn't like him. And she actually falls in love with somebody else.
Uh-oh.
And that person is Charles Blount, 8th Baron Mountjoy. Um, and interestingly enough, they had children,
Yikes.
which obviously you'd expect children to come of an affair in most cases. But Rich took no action. And he actually brought those kids up like they were his own, which
Wow.
is insane. But then when you think about the fact that Penelope's brother was the Queen's favourite,
Yeah.
what are you going to do, really?
Right. You're not gonna slander your wife. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
it would embarrass himself and annoy Elizabeth, essentially. It's going to at least annoy Essex. So he does nothing.
Oh. Well, this is
Um,
beneficial for her. There's no consequences yet.
yeah. So he just carries on, like he does nothing, which I get it, but I still find it quite shocking. But anyway, so obviously all is not well with Essex. We know how his story ends. But before that, Penelope is apparently one of the people that is writing to James the Sixth. And James is actually he's smart. He does respond, but he never says anything that would put the succession in jeopardy,
Mm,
if that makes sense. He
yeah.
just is polite with them. But she is one of those people that's writing, like basically putting herself on his radar for when he becomes king. Um, Now when the whole Essex rebellion goes down, obviously her brother is at the center of that, shall we say. He actually accuses her. So he blames his sister and says it's all her fault. Like she wanted him to do this, blah, blah. And she is kind of like, no, I didn't. Oh, he treated me more like a slave than a sister. I'm just the poor little female in a man's
Mm,
world.
mhm.
So nothing happens to her. Obviously, her brother is executed. And and then based on all of that, Rich decides he's had enough.
That was the final straw.
Yeah,
He's like, your
yeah,
brother's gone. Now your power is
yeah.
gone.
So he, boots her out, but he also boots the children out.
Oh.
So not his own Mountjoys. So those are out. So what does she do? She decides to move in with Mountjoy. So it's obviously a very public relationship at this point. Like, okay, do what you want to do. Um, so when James the Sixth does come to the throne, she does really well. Like, she is welcome at court. She serves as the lady of the bedchamber for the Queen. They're doing very well as a couple. Her and Mountjoy, by the way. And Rich actually does divorce her. He gets the divorce.
Oh.
However, the church in Tudor England did not allow remarriage, sorry, if your ex-spouse was still alive.
Hmm.
Don't worry,
Yikes.
I'm not going to say so she killed him. Um,
Not this time.
but this is Penelope. So what does she do anyway? She marries him.
Oh, well, again, following in the footsteps of her mother.
Yep, marries him in secret. Now, the interesting thing is that the marriage ceremony was conducted by William Laud, who at the time was Blount's chaplain. He later became Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh,
So, yeah. But that marriage was the last straw for James the Sixth as well. And he banished them both from court. So they basically went into disgrace. Um, Obviously they carried on living together. They were now husband and wife. But Blount actually didn't last much longer after that. He died 1606 and
wow.
Penelope died the following year. So after all that, they were only married for less than 2 years.
Wow.
So yeah, but that is a chaotic life.
Yeah.
Especially for a Tudor woman. Like that is a lot.
Oh,
But it's also quite interesting because she just doesn't seem to care. She's like, I'm just going to do what I want to do.
I just see the whole thing as like y- following your mom's example in life, right? And Penelope did not break the cycle. She wasn't like, I'm not going to make the same mistakes that my mom did. She was like, no, I'm going to create all the same patterns. I'm going to do all of the same things.
And
And
I'm going to write to James the Sixth as well. Like, oh God, yeah.
yeah, Latisse really, she was on the list of women behaving badly. I wrote her on the list because I, immediately thought about her secret marriage to Robert
Oh,
Dudley and
I have just remembered something you've reminded me by saying her name. So her and Mountjoy, one of their children was actually called Lettice, which I
oh,
assume is after her mother. But that's not the best bit. One of them, guess what their name was?
was it a boy or a girl?
A boy.
Robert. I don't know. What was it?
They called one of them Mountjoy.
Oh my God.
One of the ones that was brought up by Rich as his own was called Mountjoy.
No way. So it's just there. It's there for everybody to see. There's no questioning.
Like, could you get a bigger reminder of what your wife is doing?
Oh my God. Who decided to name the kid that? Like, did Rich not have any say in this marriage? Was he just, being controlled by his wife?
I've just found I actually laughed when I read that. I just thought, wow, like you're bringing a child into your home that you know is not your
Yeah.
husband's, and you've named that child after your lover.
That is bold. That is
It is
very
bold.
bold.
Like, wow.
She must have been very beautiful. Otherwise, I don't,
Oh, absolutely.
and she must have been good in the sack.
But it also shows you the influence that people had over Elizabeth because the fact that Rich did nothing until her Penelope's brother was actually executed says a lot to me.
Yeah, it does say
Why was that the last straw that she was implicated in the Essex Rebellion? Yes, obviously you've got to show loyalty to the Queen. You are going to show loyalty by denouncing your wife, or if they had a happy marriage, he probably would have been expected to lock her away in the country for a while to let
yeah,
Elizabeth calm down. But it seems an odd last straw when your wife has publicly humiliated you
yeah,
for years.
yeah. She might be the poster child. Her and Alice Arden, they win the
Imagine him
awards.
introducing that child. Oh, what's your son's name? Mountjoy.
Everybody's like whispering, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that they named their child after her lover."
Because it's not like Charles, is it? It's like that's the
Yeah,
title. It's Baron Mountjoy. Like
yeah.
that's
The
like naming your child. Suffolk if you're having an affair with Henry Cavill. Like,
Right. Well, there's no questioning who the father is for people later down the road like us who are looking at it. We're like, well, it seems pretty obvious who the father of that
yeah,
child is. There's no questioning it, like with Catherine Carey, right? Like with those, yeah, there's a good reason to question it. In this case, none whatsoever. It's
yeah.
just it's written there for the whole
But
world
in
to
a way,
see.
I also kind of admire Penelope's boldness because, wow, in such a patriarchal society, wow.
She learned it from her mom. Who else? Like she definitely learned
And her
how to.
brother, because look how he behaved. He thought he could
Yeah.
not be touched.
Yeah. The Earl of Essex. Yeah, that was a good story. We talked a little bit about Elizabeth I in that, and I feel like one of the things that I saw in the comments, everybody wanted to talk about the secret marriages, and everybody wanted to talk about Elizabeth I. So I don't even know which one, like, which is worse, the women under or the women who served Elizabeth marrying in secret, or is it worse that they felt they had to marry in secret because they knew Elizabeth wouldn't agree, or I mean, in the end, Elizabeth ended up punishing them. So is Elizabeth behaving badly, or is it the women who were behaving badly?
I think the first part of that is a good question for the listeners slash viewers.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'd have to take out the punishment as a separate thing because they broke the law. It's
Yep.
it's fair and square. Like Elizabeth can't sit there and do nothing. She can't. Otherwise, we know that Elizabeth well, not so much struggled, but she wanted this image of just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm weak. I am like a king.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many kings would sit there and do nothing?
Not her dad, that's for sure.
So I think she had to be seen to be doing something. Now, I think you'd have to go into each one to then try and judge, was it a fair punishment? Was it too much?
Yeah.
But she had the right to punish them. But
Did.
the interesting bit of the question is what you asked. Why did they marry in secret? Was it because she made them feel like they had to? Or was she not part of their thoughts? Was it just I
Love.
don't,
Yeah.
I
It's
don't know.
interesting. I mean, there are quite a few. I mean, we start like Catherine Gray, Bess Throckmorton. Um,
I think the interesting thing is though that some of them probably would have got permission. When
I
you
think
look at some of them, like the Grey sisters, probably not. I don't think she'd have approved those matches. But I don't think it's because she wouldn't want them to get married. I think it's the matches. But then other ones, I think she would have approved them. Like Walter Raleigh, why not? Why?
but
She
they,
might kick up a fuss that, oh, you're my favourite and you're meant to love only me.
yeah.
Well, she always comes round. So why not just ask her?
She always comes around for the man, not
Yeah.
necessarily the woman.
But even if it had been, okay, if you marry her, she's out of the court. Then they've got a decision to make. Do they do it and she leaves the court?
Yeah.
Or do they not do it? Or do they marry in secret and hope for the best? But why not just ask first? If the answer's no, it doesn't change anything, does it?
Oh, I feel like there needs to be a study done on behaviors at Elizabethan court, or I don't even know like what exactly the study would have to be, but it would have to be to like look at Elizabeth's behavior and how the people behaved around her and did secret things and why, exactly what we're talking about. Why did they choose to do it that way? Why did they feel they couldn't? Why did Elizabeth the First behave the way that she did? There's so much, I think, that goes into it. And of course, a lot of that's going to go into Elizabeth's life experience and her
Yeah.
predecessors and looking at how things were handled by other people.
Mm.
I think
I
it's
think there'll be some couples that, it wasn't a question of marriage until someone's pregnant.
right. Yeah.
So there are going to be cases like that as well, where they've just thought, oh God, okay, we better get married. We can't ask the Queen because we'd technically be telling her what we've been doing.
Right.
We'll have to do it in secret because they want the child to be born in wedlock,
Yeah.
which is understandable considering the religious aspect of it. So I think there's quite a lot that goes into that, all different factors of, yeah. But I think that the audience should answer.
I think that's great. It does make me wonder a little bit. Maybe we'll just finish on this note. It does make me wonder a little bit if it has something to do with Elizabeth's experience with her stepmother, Catherine Parr, marrying in secret.
Mm. Yeah,
If seeing how that played out or how people at court behaved because of it and the chaos that came because of that secret marriage, if that
hmm,
was something that was just ingrained in Elizabeth from her teenage years up until
yeah,
she became a queen and she was like, nothing good comes from secret marriages. But that still
yeah.
doesn't answer the question, like, why did they feel they had to marry in secret?
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. This was women behaving badly.
yeah. So we've got to answer Rebecca's question
Yes.
and whether there's anybody else that's misbehaved that we've missed.
Yeah, I'm sure we have missed some. There's got to be. And then lastly, I
I
want to
might have to go back in the Norwich court records and have a nosy round because they are fun.
go through this book some more, okay? And Amy, if you don't even have it yet, you need to get it because this is like a treasure trove. This book has so many stories in here. There was one story of criminals that was somebody who's trying to have the Duke of Norfolk murdered, the third Duke, which I thought was interesting. But there wasn't much detail, so that's why we didn't talk about it today because I couldn't give you
I'm not
much on
sure I
that.
blame her.
I know that's the first thing that I thought too. I'm sure there were many other people who tried to have him murdered. Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining me again today. I can't wait to meet up with you again next Sunday.
Yep, see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Off the Record on Tudor's Dynasty and Beyond. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following the podcast. And if you'd like to support the work that goes into researching and creating these episodes, you can find extra content and ways to join the community through Patreon and Substack. And don't forget, you can now comment directly on episodes over on Spotify. I love reading every single one. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you back here for more royal drama and real history.